Yeah, so welcome back to my new video on Kubernetes deployment object. Okay, so a deployment in Kubernetes provides declarative updates for pods and replica sets. You describe a desired state in a deployment, and then the deployment controller changes the actual state to the desired state at a control rate. You can define the deployments to create new replica sets or to remove existing deployments and adopt all their resources with new deployments. So it's more like you have a thermostat in your room, and whenever the temperature falls below certain degrees, the thermostat will start and bring the room temperature back to your desired state. So it can go below the desired state, and then the thermostat will bring it up to the desired state. So from the actual state or the current state to the desired state that you want in your room. So basically, if you're looking for 70 Fahrenheit, and then it goes below 70, your thermostat will bring back the temperature to 70 Fahrenheit. So that is what Kubernetes does to your pod. So when your pod, the status of your pod goes below certain state, the controllers, the deployment controllers are able to bring the pod back to its desired state. And this replica set helps in activities like that. So it's a layer on top of layers. So most of Kubernetes deployment, you'll be looking at deployment a lot. Is very key. Unlike the pod, pod is just the basic unit. So you wouldn't see that in real life most of the time. You only use pod for testing purposes only, I would say. And with deployment, it gives you all the benefits you need. So yeah. So as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, that is a typical deployment configuration or a manifest file, I would say. So it has some layers that I'll be describing. As you can see, the API version, the kind is what deployment, and then the metadata. The metadata is how you're going to be describing your deployment, and the name is what Nginx deployment, and then you are giving it a label of app Nginx. And then with the specification part, you have replica sets. And replica sets, you want 3 replicas of your pod. So 3, it could be 2, 1, whatever you choose, and you can scale it up whenever you want. And then the selector part matches the label app Nginx, and then the template also matches the label app Nginx. And then the specification part is where you specify your containers. So you put in the name, then the name of the image you want, and then the container port on which that container will be running. So this is a minimal configuration for deployment file. There are more to this configuration, but we don't want to add extra information. But as we move on in the lessons on Kubernetes, I'll be talking more about it going into the future. So the next slide is deployment. So as I said earlier, when you have the 4 parts, it comes with 4, or let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. But I usually don't consider the API version part, but it's part of it. So the API version needs to be considered, and then the kind segment, which is called deployment, and then the metadata. Okay, so you can go to this URL to read more about the metadata, and then the spec, that is the deployment specification, what you want to specify for the deployment. So you see specification of the desired behavior of the deployment. And then the status segment, you don't see that very often, but it's mostly hidden from people. People don't usually talk about that side, but it's also part. And that part gives you most recent observation or the status of your deployment. Okay, so that side gives you status information of your deployment. So I think that is all for okay, so let's talk about the use cases also. You can create a deployment to roll out a replica set. You can declare the new state of the pods. It can help you to roll back to an earlier deployment revision. And then it can also help you to scale the deployment to facilitate more load. And then you can pause the rollout of a deployment. You can use the status of the deployment as an indicator that a rollback has started. You can use it for cleanup purposes. Okay. So I think that is all for the use cases. So I'm just going to jump into the terminal, and then I'm going to show you how you can work with deployment. Okay. All right, so let me switch back to my terminal. Okay, so currently I'm in my terminal. So what I'm going to do is I have Azure Kubernetes provision. So I'm going to check whether it's still running. So I'm going to say kubectl get nodes and enter. So as you can see, I have two nodes running, Kubernetes nodes running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a deployment for Nginx. So I'm going to say kubectl create. Okay, let me create a namespace first, then we work inside the namespace. So I'm going to create a new namespace. So if I say kubectl get ns works. So as you can see, we have the YouTube namespace created 9 seconds ago. So I'm going to say kubectl create deployment Nginx. And then the version we are going to be using is going to be 1.14.2. And you are free to use your own version or your own image. That is also fine. And then also I'm going to specify the port on which this image is going to be running. And then I'm going to say dry run is equal to clients output as YAML, and then redirect it to nginx.yaml. Okay, so if I run this, and then you can see this is what I just created. When I cut Nginx, You see, this is the deployment with some, the name is what? Nginx app. And then the image is this one. And then the name is this. It's running on this port 80. And then the status, you see, it's empty. And because this spec configuration, we don't have any resource allocation like memory and CPU. You see that one too is empty. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to do kubectl apply -f nginx. I think something happened. So I'm going to say kubectl apply -f nginx .yaml, and then we're going to specify the namespace as for YouTube. Okay, so if I run that, so as you can see, the deployment is created. So let's go have a look. Get deployment in the namespace YouTube. You see, 1 out of 1. So let's go have a look at the port. So you can see we have 1 port running. We can scale this port. So if we say kubectl scale deployment, then we're going to specify 5 of those. And then we're going to say it's Nginx. The name of the deployment is what? Nginx. So if we run that, oh no, so I have to specify the namespace, which I forgot. So if I run this, I said the name Nginx not found. Okay, it's actually Nginx app. Sorry about that. Okay, it's scaled. So if I say kubectl get ports, you see, we have 5 of those ports running. And then if you notice about the node, we have node 1 and node 2. Sorry, node 1, and then node 0, node 0. So basically you have 2 of the ports running on node 1, and then 3 of the port running on node 0. Okay, so that is where the scheduler comes in. The scheduler is able to determine how to schedule those ports on the available nodes. Okay, so that is about that. So what can we do next? We can also look at setting the image to a new version. Okay, so if we see kubectl describe deployment, and name of deployment is Nginx app. Okay, namespace, which I forgot again. It's annoying. I have to switch. Okay, so if we describe this deployment, you can see some good information. You see the rolling update strategy, will come to that. And then the image is what? 1.14.2. And the port on which is running is 80. And yeah, another information, which I'll be talking about in the next couple videos. So what I can also do here is I want to update this image instead of 1.14.2 to a newer version. So I'm going to clear the screen. So I'm going to say kubectl set image, and then I'm going to change, it's called Nginx app. Then we're going to set the image. Then the image is Nginx colon 1.16.1. Okay, and I'm going to pass the parameter record. Okay, so let me enter that and see what we get. Says what? Say record error from, okay. So I didn't specify the namespace again. So I'm going to say YouTube. Okay, so let me see what is happening here. So kubectl get deployment. Okay, it's Nginx app. Okay, so I see what is going on. So just gonna clean this up. Yeah, so I think there was a typo in there. So this is the image. So let's see how our pod looks like. Get pods from the YouTube namespace. Okay, you see it's running, it's still running. So if we describe this deployment, you can see the new image is 1.16.1. Okay, that is our new image. We've upgraded the new image. And then we can also edit. Okay, so we can say kubectl edit deployment, and then the name of the deployment is Nginx app. So the namespace one more time, YouTube. You see, so that is we can edit the image, which I'm going to change back to 1.4.2. Okay. So if I do that, and then I say kubectl describe deployment, you see, it's changed back to 1.14.2. And let's see if the image is, or the pod is still running. Get pod. Okay, see, everything looks fine. Everything is still running. So what can we also do? We can also roll out. Okay, so let's look at rollout. Rollout history of this deployment. Nginx. Another mistake because I didn't specify The namespace is YouTube. You can see how annoying specifying the namespace each time you want to run a command. I'm going to show you how you can switch, or you can switch from one namespace to the other one, so that you don't have this kind of issues. You see, the rollout history, we have revision 2 and revision 3, and then the kind of commands that we actually run. Okay, so if I set image to, so if I set the image to .2.14 and then record it. Okay, so if I go back and check the history, you see now we have the history 2, which was the last one, and then the current one, which is revision 3. You can see the image has been changed from 1.16.1 to 1.14.2. So this command right here helps you to record the command that you actually use in changing your image, so that once you come in again in the future, you'll be able to see what exactly you changed. Okay, so we can also check the rollout status. So we can say kubectl rollout status of Nginx -app. Default namespace is YouTube. You see deployment Nginx app successfully rolled out. Okay. So we can also roll back to the previous version. So if we say kubectl rollout history deployment Nginx app, and then we want to revision to number 2. We want to go back to 2. Revision is what? Now the current state is what? This one, revision 3. We want to roll back to our previous image, revision 2. Okay, so I'm just going to specify revision 2, and then again specify the namespace YouTube. Okay, so let's now check the rollout history. I think I missed something. Okay, so I think it's correct. We're just seeing the more details of revision 2 only. We are not changing it. We're just seeing more history. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say kubectl rollout history. Okay, so this is the history 2 and 3. So I'm going to change this 3, which is the current revision, to back to revision 2. So this is the command kubectl rollout undo. Use the undo command, and then I'm going to specify Nginx app, and then to revision 2, not 3, because we want to roll the revision back to 2. Okay, Another error, namespace is YouTube. Okay, so it's been rolled back. So if we check the history now, you see, now it's revision 4, but it has the new image 1.16.1. Okay. So I think I talked about scaling the deployment. What if we want to auto scale this deployment? So currently we have kubectl get ports. Okay. So currently we have 5 ports running. What if I want to scale it down? I'm going to say kubectl scale deployments. I want to scale it back to 2. Okay. So if I do that, you see 3 of the ports are terminating. And what the last thing I want to do is we want to do horizontal port scaling. But I think I have to do a separate video on horizontal port scaling. So I'm not going to do it right now. In the future video, I think I'll do it. Horizontal post auto scaling is just to help you scale your deployment whenever CPU utilization goes up, then automatically the pod should scale between some minimum number of pods and then maximum number of pods without you, the developer, coming in to do the scaling manually. Okay, so we will reserve that for future videos. If you have any comments, you can leave them in the comment section below, and then I'll try as much as possible to get back to you. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It's very important. It's going to help us grow this channel. Yeah, so I think that is all for now. So once you are done with everything, you can say, you can tear down the deployment and say kubectl delete deployment Nginx app in the YouTube namespace. Okay, so deployment deleted. So that is all for today. I'll see you in the next one.